A very good evening to you, esteemed viewer. Thank you so much for coming through. This is Church of Uganda Family TV, and this is Family Hour. You are watching. It's a Monday, of course, a fresh start. We have a lot of optimism about the week. So we thank God for the day it was, and here we are for the Family Hour. Monday edition is always education, and Adventurous in Makalas is my name. Of course, with us is Mrs. Chitu Christine. It's a pleasure having you.
A very good evening to you, viewers.
And Canon Alice, it's a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
Well, today I'll start with this write-up. Of course, this was a message that was shared on very many platforms. Probably you might have read about it in one of the WhatsApp platforms, but it's important to give us a basis of our discussion. We are looking at raising curious learners. But for a start, we don't know whether it was a real story or an imaginary story, but here it is. Sad. When my firstborn daughter committed suicide, she was in Form 3, St. Augustine Girls High School. To date, I have never healed. I feel defeated. My world crushed, and every passing day, life continues to lose meaning for me. My daughter, Purity, had a full, blessed, and promising life ahead of her. She was destined for something bigger than the sum of all her youthful ambitions. But my dear daughter had decided to end her young life. My wife and I received a call from St. Augustine Girls High School, and we had been instructed to rush to the institution as soon as we could. An emergency had occurred involving our daughter, Purity, and that the sooner we go to the institution, the better. I can't truly highlight the kind of panic my wife and I developed after such a distress call. I got our car, hitting the road immediately, and we journeyed through the 1-hour drive to St. Augustine Girls. We kept asking God to go ahead of us and secure the situation that was ahead of us. My wife kept praying tearfully, asking God to protect her daughter from any harm or ugly situation that was happening at the institution. Sadly, for us, the principal who had called us didn't really notify us of what was going on. This even worsened our anxiety as we made our way to the school. Truly, I had never driven my car in such a horrible mess of speed. All I wanted to do was to get to the school, set my eyes on my daughter, hug her, and see her okay. But again, those were just my fatherly wishful thinking. I knew something had gone terribly wrong. Fast forward, we go to St. Augustine School after an hour. With the acidic anxiety that had taken over my sin of judgment, all I cared was to see my daughter, at least alive. At the principal's office, we were greeted by a very somber mood. Everyone there was giving us a blank and scary stare without telling us why we had been summoned to the school. I smelled a rat and quickly demanded to see my daughter, who was a Form 3 student at that school. It's at that point that the principal, Mrs. Anne Kirimi, held my hand and that of my wife and walked us down the administration hall. And with so much pain in her voice, she tearfully narrated to us how my daughter's body had been discovered at the junior dormitories earlier that morning. She told us that she had been rushed to the school's dispensary, and after failing to respond to first aid attempts, my daughter Purity had then been rushed to Kiambu Level 4 Referral Hospital. At the hospital, otoscopy revealed that she had suffered overdose of her asthma medication. She had ingested 37 tablets of the powerful Montrelage drug. Besides her lifeless body, she had left a letter addressed to my wife and I. With shaking hands and tears in her eyes, the principal handed over the suicide letter that my dear daughter, Purity, had left for my wife and I to read. So, now this is the letter, and this is where the message is in this whole message. Dear Mom and Dad, I can only imagine the pain in your hearts upon learning my sudden death. But please, worry not. I'm at a better place now. But my next statement will make you feel even worse. But it's the truth. mom and dad. The two of you contributed significantly to my death. Yes, you did. I have been with you for the longest holiday ever since coronavirus hit our country and lockdown imposed. I was with you, my parents, under the same roof for 8 long months under lockdown. But every day, I felt like a stranger in our very own home. Many times, you, my parents, blamed me for certain weird things, like asking for some little money to go and buy some personal stuff. You, dad, you always denied me money until I told you what stuff was, and many times you screamed at me for developing foreign habits deviant of what you always thought you taught me. If only you knew that I had broken puberty and the little money I was asking for in secrecy were for my menstrual pads and innerwears like bras. Dad, you truly want to know what I was going to do with that? When you denied me the 100 shillings for the same, what did you think I was going to spend it on, Dad? My parents, to be honest with you, you taught me nothing but hate, loneliness, and bitterness. The only parents I have had are my teachers, including the one who will give you this letter when I finally die. You never paid attention to my basic needs. Look at this. I started baby class at 3 years, spent a day with a strange woman who taught me how to speak and sing. You were busy either at work or meeting friends in the evening for some upcoming country tenders. I lacked parental care and attention. I joined nursery school at 5 years. You still had no time for me. The only time I sat with you was during my homework when you shouted at me while pinching my ears for writing 6 as 9 or at least G. After homework, it was the housemaid, Tina, who attended to me because you, mommy, was busy watching some La Rancha, La Mova de Mi Vida, or some Mexican or Filipino soap on TV. Dad, you were busy watching the Azimolaris and diaspora meetings. How I slept or woke up was the housemaid's business. She took me to school while pinching my ears to walk faster as she gossiped with fellow maids or flirted with boys within the estate. You had no time for me. With time and by association, I learned how to speak like our maid. I spent 10 hours with my new parent, the teachers of the school you took me to. To be honest, teachers need a pat on the back. We were 105 students in the class, and the teacher ensured that they attended to all of us. Yet, you parents had me only, and you failed to attend to my needs. During weekends, both of you, or each one of you, had time to socialize with buddies. You left us with the housemates. Who either brought boyfriends at home or sneaked out to see her fellow maids. Sometimes Tina taught me sexual positions and asked me to touch her on some places. She pinched my ears and made me swear not to tell you. I obeyed. She had replaced you as my guide and role model. She was like my elder sister. Come Monday to Friday, I went back to my great parents, my teachers, who spent the bigger time with me. Mom and Dad, I was then called to join high school. Here, where my body had been discovered, the only thing that connected me with you was the school fees you paid. I had completely lost you guys as my parents. I had peer pressure, new adventures, and tests. In my haze and craze to keep up with life, and in the endeavor to find young love, adoration, and being understood, I got pregnant. My parents, I feared you to death. I feared you because I did not have a connection with you. I feared telling you that I was pregnant at only 16. I didn't want to abort my baby. I would have never carried that guilt with me all my life. I therefore decided to die with my unborn baby. Maybe just Mhm. Maybe when we reach heaven, God will give me the understanding that the two of you didn't give me. Dad and mom, please don't blame me for anything. Don't blame my teachers. Don't blame drugs or anything else. Don't blame that boy. Maybe he also had parents like you who never bothered. Go back to where you lost me, but sadly, you will never find me again, Papa and Mama. I'm now at peace with my unborn child and the angels in heaven. So we are picking our discussion from there. Mrs. Chintu, it is such an emotional text and long one, but important, especially to parents when it gets to parenting. We are in an age where parents pay a lot of attention to the school fees, and they demand accountability for the school fees they pay. But what do you think was missing out with these parents? Because the child says that the only connection I had with you was the school fees you are paying.
Probably the two of them were biological parents, but not friends to the child. And that can be very dangerous. Our theme today, what we are focusing on,
Yes.
is raising curious children.
Yes.
And I wanted to start with what I knew in my generation. Most times people would say children are seen, not heard. Now, that's not to say that that's what was happening in my home, but most homes, the children were not allowed to say anything. They were only to be present, and whatever instruction they got from the parents and whoever was older around. So it was difficult to cultivate this friendship. I want to thank God because over the years this has changed a lot. So you can be able to observe when your learner is curious, and you should, as a parent, you should try and pay attention to what they're trying to say to you. Oftentimes a child is saying, "Daddy, Daddy," and you're either looking on your phone, you are busy scrolling, or you say, "No, I have to finish this report. Can you wait?" I remember when we were raising our own children, we taught them something. It was a good discipline, but we told them that if they find us talking, either just the two of us or with somebody, they'd have to put up their hand and say, "Please, may I talk?" That is calling for our attention. And then we'd stop what we are doing and listen. If it was inconvenient for us to listen at the time, say, "In a minute, we'll give you." But they had the liberty to come and say, "Please, may I talk?" Because probably why you have come, you have something to communicate. And that communication gap has been closed a bit. Our children and our learners are no longer afraid of their parents. They can afford to talk to them. But probably for that girl's case, Tina was the only person that she could talk to because the parents were too far away, too busy doing this, too busy doing that. And so Tina was the only place where she could find answers to her questions, where her curiosity would be satisfied. And that's how she ended up into various habits that were unfortunate. So the parent, over and above everything else, it's important that the parent is a friend to their child. Because when you are a friend, you open up communication lines. You give them the ability to talk to you freely without any fear or favor. And they can express their curiosity without trying to express it elsewhere with strangers, with people who promise them wonderful answers. Because it's very easy for one who wants to destroy you to see through your child and see that they are empty and that they are lacking in an area. It may not necessarily be financial, but that they have unanswered questions. And then they make these wonderful promises how they are going to answer whatever it is that is going on in their lives. So we need to allow our children, one, over and above everything else, to be our friends. It's possible for your parent to be your friend.
Canon, we grew up hearing this saying that curiosity killed a rat. Now the question is curiosity good or bad?
Thank you so much, Adrian, for that question. Listening to that story and also putting into perspective our topic for today, raising curious learners.
there's one thing that actually came up. There are things that we have that we could embrace as parents that are priceless. Just like listening. If those parents had allowed themselves to listen, because when you are listening, everybody thinks of the word, the spoken word, but you can listen, and even as you observe body language. I strongly believe, even when she was asking for that stuff, she was communicating in so many ways. If a girl is going for maybe her menstrual cycle, you will see she will communicate. She will communicate the discomfort, the restlessness, the sleeping. So as parents, it is a choice, by the way, even for you, to say, I am going to do this for my child. Now, for me, when Mrs. Chintu says that children were supposed to be seen and not heard, there is one thing that I'll bring back into my space, because you're talking about education. When a child just wants to communicate their challenges, and the first people that they encounter in their lives are their parents. And then you choose as a parent not to give them audience. So when we talk about charity begins at home, the first school is at home. What are we trying to communicate? Now, my problem with all this is, at the end of the day, a parent is demanding a lot from their child when actually they have invested nothing other than school fees. Because when you talk about paying school fees, it is exchange, right? Now, if you want a good degree, you'll have it because you paid for it, right? But is it that the degree that makes me a wholesome person? No. But there's also the other thing. When you are a little older, you want your child to engage you. But what have you invested for you to build a stronger relationship with your child? So when we talk about curiosity, it's important for us to know where we are coming from. I will choose to be curious with a person who has allowed themselves to open up to me. It is very difficult, even when we talk about our spaces as teachers, for a child to come and ask a question to a teacher who has not opened up their space to be asked questions. Because that's where curiosity comes from. So it should be deliberate. It should be intentional, both for parents, for teachers, for religious leaders. If somebody shows up, read, listen.
Read their body language.
Read their body language. Observe them. Yeah? You can go to in an environment and ask somebody, are you okay? Are you well? And you see them tearing up. That is communication enough. Do you want them to speak loudly that I'm emotionally challenged? Yes. So when we talk about curiosity, it's for us to have an understanding. No child is going to come to you to be curious when you have not opened up your space for curiosity. That's why she could not talk to the parents. And she preferred Tina. And of course, what did Tina do? Is to impart the values, because you can't give what you don't have.
Yes.
And that is what we had at the end of the day.
Now that takes us to...
So curiosity does not kill a cat.
Okay.
It is a necessary evil, if you can call it that way. It won't kill you, because it will help you for you to get behind the why beneath the why. And that is what actually helps us to raise children wholesomely.
Mrs. Chintu, we are in an era where, especially parents, do not want to be reasoned. That at some point when a child tries to be too much on them, that is also another problem. But why is it important why is it important to raise this curious learner? And what are some of the things that you save this child from?
First of all, if you do not want to be asked too many questions, that means that you fear to be challenged. And we have many parents like that. They fear to be challenged, probably, and really I must be excused for this. Some parents fear to be challenged because they have not had the same level of education as their children. So they want to silence it all by saying, "Nze muzaddewo, tonziramu," that sort of thing. Because that way you won't task them to answer too many questions that you're not able to answer. But I think that it is important for every parent to know that within your child lies a lot of potential. and it must be enhanced as much as possible. And in as much as you are not qualified in terms of education wise, you are qualified as a parent to answer their first questions. You are qualified enough to say, you know what, I don't know what you're asking me, but I'll try to find out. Maybe you go and ask Auntie Alice, because Auntie Alice knows a little more than I do. And I know that my child has been introduced to Auntie Alice and they've become friends. So I can afford to say, go and ask Auntie Alice. We feel that we are too proud to acknowledge our ignorance. So as parents, sometimes we struggle with that. But every child who is curious, for me, I find it as an advantage. That means they want to know, and they are not waiting to find out from other people. They are desiring to know more and more. And I remember, I think it's Albert Einstein who used to say, never stop asking questions. I think it's Albert Einstein. Never stop asking questions, because there's no way you're going to get answers if you don't have questions. You'll never know anything unless you find out. There's always some. So when I go to schools and universities and institutions and I interact with these young people, I always create a slot and tell them, you know what? I want you to close your eyes and imagine a person who you can ask absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. Maybe it's a question you've always wanted to ask your mother, but you're too afraid. Maybe it's your aunt you wanted to ask. I am that person today. So I open it up to them and I say, you can ask absolutely anything and you won't be judged for it. And then I'll be able to give the answers. Many children, many learners have not had that opportunity. They go with unanswered questions into their adulthood and they only discover later and say, I wish I knew. We shouldn't be living in a generation which is saying, I wish I knew. Because each of us is one teaching the other. There's something you know that I don't know. There's something I know she doesn't know. If we teach each other, then we'll be able to teach other generations. Whatever it is that we know, if we don't pass it on to the next generation, there will be a gap and there will be a break in communication. And then all these AIs and whatever will find an opportunity to give the answers that we are not giving, albeit when they are warped. So it is important for every parent to know how to embrace their curious child and work with them to develop them further, because that curiosity can be used positively. You'll find that they are able to be creative. You can find that they are able to discover new things. You can find they're able to explore. All those things come from being curious.
Thank you so much. Canon Alice,
Yes,
as someone in an education institution, sometimes such learners can be disgusting, if I can put it like that. But just to
Maybe
help,
not disgusting, but irritating.
irritating, irritating. Yeah, they can be irritating, and I believe that teachers are also human beings. There is a time you feel like this child is being too much, but also this child suffers a rejection from fellow students. They'll call them all sorts of names. But how can, for example, a teacher cope up with such a learner?
Now, when we talk about coping up with such a learner, and you're saying, okay, this child may be a little bit disgusting, isn't it? But you just flip the coin for yourself. Don't look at the disgust. Look at the strength that you have to be able to understand this child and make them a better person. So the moment you flip that coin, then you begin to encourage and celebrate curiosity. Like what Mrs. Sin said, you ask any question, right? And at times some of don't want to put a face to the, they don't want to put a face to the
scribble.
Yeah, to the question, so they'll scribble. It needs somebody with a lot of boldness and wisdom to be able to address the challenges. but you have no understanding now from the education space what you do for a child who has had a question and they cannot ask anybody, and here somebody is giving them an answer,
An opportunity.
Right? Because I love when scripture says, seek wisdom, seek knowledge. But if it costs you all you've got, seek understanding. Do you realize that most of the decisions, the informed decisions that we make and give us mileage is out of understanding?
That's true.
So when we are talking about curiosity, let's just flip the coin for ourselves, especially in the education platforms, that for us it's giving us an opportunity to model, to shape these young souls, so that when they are making these decisions, they are making informed decisions. Now, when you have a generation that is asking questions, they will have less mistakes, because when you know better, you do better. So for me, curiosity should be given,
Thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Let's flip that coin. When you have this little girl or boy asking you, Mommy, am I supposed to get married in a white gown? The conversation starts,
Yes.
isn't it? But because they've never asked, even when it comes for the preventive measures, probably don't even know where to place your feet, because you're like, do they know? Or maybe they don't know. Maybe, how best can I advise? So let's ask children to ask questions. But not only questions, even let's ask adults. I will tell you, if somebody wants to test your knowledge about something, what do they do?
Yes.
Yes.
They ask. Right? So what is the problem of asking? When you ask, when people are willing to share, they'll share their experiences, they'll help you make an informed decision. Why do you make mistakes when somebody else has been through that experience and they can help you to be able to make the right decision so that you don't go through the same experience? So curiosity should be given another face.
Wow.
But I also thought that it's necessary for us to separate two things. There will be children or learners who are just curious. And then there will be those who are attention seekers.
Now, Mrs. Chit, let's take a short commercial break. When we return, we are going to start from there. Drawing a line.